In that moment of silence, Lucy suddenly asked him, did he still have jerky? Ed could only sigh helplessly at that. He then said that he had told her it was over. Lucy then sighed disappointedly at that. Ed's conversations with Lucy were always like this. Ed then asked her, what is she doing here? Lucy replied, she was just reminiscing about the past. Lucy then knocked on the seat next to her as a signal to ask him to sit there, but Ed did not dare to sit there. He was worried because if he fell from here, he would die immediately. Lucy did not mind that. She then told a story. A long time ago, there was a very sad incident that made her cry a lot when she remembered it, but after some time, it didn't feel so sad anymore. Hearing that, Ed then asked, why? Lucy said, she had thought hard about it, but it turned out that the reason was simple. It was just because time had passed. Those sad memories were eroded little by little from her mind as time went by. Digging up old wounds after so long was stupid, although she wanted to resurrect her grandfather with celestial magic, but she knew, in the end, he still chose to leave again. It was because he was already preparing to pass away. If she got carried away, maybe it would only kill him again. Resurrecting a great archmage who dedicated his life to studying magic with forbidden magic would only insult him. Ed listened to her story in silence. He also now ventured to sit next to her. Lucy said that she had realized it from the beginning, resurrecting him or whatever. It was all just because of her own greed. After listening to her story, Ed then asked her, was she sure this was okay? Ed realized that he shouldn't ask her that, but he couldn't bear to ask. Lucy changing her mind to resurrect Glast again must be just a momentary desire. If she suddenly changed her desire back, something very terrible could happen. Ed already realized that. Lucy then called him, although Lucy had not said anything, but Ed was annoyed, because he thought Lucy wanted to ask for jerky again, because usually she always starts like that, but this time it seems not. Lucy asked him to lend his shoulder for a while. Ed then realized, the reason Lucy made them sit on the edge of the fence like this, apparently just for this. They watched the amazing magic phenomenon in silence. In the future, finding someone who is that serious about celestial magic like Professor Glast will be difficult. The existence of magic to revive the dead will end here. The dead are dead, the lost are no more. Forms of loss happen to each person for various reasons, but eventually everyone will be hit by it. Therefore, one must learn to accept the loss and cover the wound with the things given now. Lucy understood that fact very well. She was now crying bitterly. Tears flooded her face. Ed was aware of that. Therefore, he sat beside Lucy, looking at the magic tower in the sky for some time. The sky full of stars seemed higher than usual, and it was quite beautiful. To protect the sacrifice from Taylor's party, Professor Glast then raised the giant. It was an ancient weapon that Professor Glast created by using celestial magic. They were shocked and they saw the size of it. They could also finally see Isla, who was now unconscious. Taylor then called her out loudly. The final battle of Act 2, Magical Golem. Isla was now being placed inside the golem core. It would be difficult for them to get her out of there, because Professor Glast certainly would not remain silent. He then controlled the golem to attack towards them. Taylor was then surprised, when he saw the golem's big hand attacking towards them, that one attack really had a very powerful effect. After a while, the dust that was flying due to the golem's attack finally disappeared. They apparently survived the golem's attack because Zix blocked the attack using his magic, but he seemed to be quite overwhelmed. He then told Taylor to move quickly. Hearing that, Taylor immediately moved towards the golem. He stepped without hesitation towards the golem. He was determined to get Isla back. Professor Glast suffered from nearsightedness. Since a while ago, he could not see anything without his glasses, so he was completely unaware of the approaching Taylor, and ended up being cut down by her sword. His life as a teacher was very static. Sitting in front of the large desk in the private research room, reading and delving into the sage's scroll, analyzing celestial magic, organizing the academic curriculum and reviewing the materials used to teach the students, he continued to do so throughout the day, until the scenery outside the window changed. During the snowy season, a first-year student from the elementology faculty always came to his personal research room. She said she wanted to observe middle-level magic. During the rainy season, he had another guest. She was the youngest professor. She always came to apologize awkwardly for causing an accident. In the spring, when the breeze was blowing, the dean, who was on his way to a meeting, always stopped by for tea, it remained unchanged even after he became the principal, sitting in the same position, lost in a pile of work. He always thought that the painful memories would fade away over time, but he seemed to be wrong. With the help of the sage's scroll, Professor Glast then cast celestial magic, turning back time. The memory of his daughter's death was still painfully etched in his head. That's why he did this crazy act. A very powerful magic overflowed around when he cast the forbidden magic. It made it even more difficult for Zix to block it. They were shocked and confused when they saw it. The world around them suddenly turned gray, and the environment around them seemed to be distorted. Seeing that, Zix knew how serious the situation was, so he then pushed Taylor away from the range of the forbidden magic, although he was then affected by the magic like everyone else, but fortunately, he had managed to keep Taylor away from it. Not wasting Zix's efforts, Taylor also moved as much as possible away from the magic range. Professor Glast was silent for a moment. He seemed to be thinking about something. Sometimes, his vision became blurred, and the thing that was drawn in the darkness behind the eyelids was the thing he regretted the most, something that had been lost from him. Professor Glast then calmed himself down. He was almost there, but he knew there was still one obstacle in his way at the moment. Looking at Taylor, who was now standing opposite him, he then told them to just give up. It was useless to stop him. With all his strength, he would turn back time, as Professor Glast controlled the magical golem behind him. The golem's mouth then glowed as if it was about to shoot out a laser, but, before the golem could even launch its attack, Taylor then quickly slashed at the golem. It managed to make the giant golem's body cut into several pieces. Professor Glast was then shocked to see that, and when he could clearly see Taylor's current appearance, he then realized that he was using the swordsman ritual. Even though Taylor had attacked the golem with all his might, but it seemed useless, because Professor Glast could use celestial magic to turn back time, to restore the golem's condition. Not only the golem, even Zix and others were also affected. Professor Glast then told Taylor that it was useless. He also thought, even if the rest of his life had to be cut off, but the professor suddenly coughed up blood. The cost of casting that magic did not seem low. And what's worse is, he was suddenly hit by mid-level ice magic, Ice Spear. The magic turned out to come from Zix, who was now free from the effects of his magic. Zix then asked them to move now. Hearing that, they then attacked Professor Glast together with their respective attacks. Professor Glast was desperate to see that. He didn't even have the intention to block their attacks, and what made him even more desperate was, when he saw Taylor move to attack the magical golem behind him, his attack managed to blow up the golem. It also made him finally save Isla. After a while, after the impact of the explosion from the golem subsided, Professor Glast was seen walking with a limp. He had completely given up at this time and recognized their victory. Without saying another word, Professor Glast then dropped himself from that towering magic tower. What a tragic scene. Professor Glast then said to his daughter that he wanted to meet her, but, when Professor Glast seemed to have no enthusiasm for life and wanted to end his own life by jumping from the magic tower, a magic circle suddenly appeared at this time. Professor Glast's figure suddenly disappeared when his body was enveloped by the magic circle. The magic circle apparently teleported Professor Glast somewhere before he died, falling from a height. Celestial magic, space leap, it was the last remaining escape route of Professor Glast, but for some reason, his escape was very late. Even magic hemostasis seemed to be in vain. In the original scenario there was also no action whatsoever. Anyone would know by looking at this scene, Professor Glast would definitely die here, but, in his critical situation, he suddenly had someone coming. Professor Glast then asked, how did he get here? Wasn't it past curfew for the dormitory? That person was of course Ed. Professor Glast would die here. Even though he didn't do anything else, but, there was still something he had to make sure.